Hello class and welcome to Introduction to Art. This week our text and our discussion will be considering the very large question you see on this slide. What is art? What is its function? What does art do? These questions don't have one answer, but hopefully by the end of this chapter and by the end of this class, you'll start to understand some historical and philosophical arguments about the definition of art. In our text for this class, Introduction to Art Design, Context and Meaning, the author states in Chapter 1 that art is the process of moving ideas from the mind into the world. In the reading for this week, week 1, Mark Getline says that some scholars now prefer the term visual culture to art. That's a term that broadens the view of art from something that hangs in a museum to include the vast array of art objects in and out of museums that have been made by different people in different contexts throughout the world. Whichever term you use, the words art and artist can be really difficult to define. And this is complicated by the fact that we all bring to the table our own preconceived notions of what is or isn't art and what constitutes good art or bad art. On this slide, I've shared some images for considering the question of what is art. In the upper left, we have a still image from an installation art piece by Marco Evaristi. That's the blenders with the what looks like goldfish. This was originally on display in a museum in Denmark in 2000. The art installation consisted of a room with 10 blenders, each of which contained a green swordtail fish, and visitors were able to turn on any blender at any time to kill the fish, and 2 fish actually ended up being killed in this way. The artist stated that this work was about 3 different types of human personality: the sadist, who will want to kill the fish simply because they can; the voyeur, who excitedly watches to see the chaos; and the moralist, who is infuriated that there is even an option to blend fish. A researcher remarked that the exhibit started an intense discussion about animal rights and artistic freedom, and the director of the museum was actually charged with the crime of animal cruelty for even hosting the exhibition, but ultimately did not receive a conviction. This work is undeniably controversial and disturbing, but it's also really thought-provoking, and is that enough to make it art? In the center, in the upper center, we have a selfie taken by Naruto the macaque monkey using photography equipment set up by nature photographer David Slater, who had traveled to Indonesia in 2011 to take photos of this critically endangered species. He published the photos along with the story of how they were taken to several news publications, including The Telegraph and The Guardian. Slater gave further details on how the photos were taken, which basically entailed him rigging up his camera equipment so that the monkeys could approach him and they would set off an automatic shutter that would then take their pictures. So in a way, the monkeys were taking selfies. The photos were uploaded to Wikipedia, and Wikipedia designated them as open source, something which David Slater spent significant legal time trying to fight. Wikipedia claimed that a non-human creator had taken the photos, and since a non-human creator could not hold a copyright, that meant the photos belonged in the public domain. Separately, PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, tried to use the monkey selfies to establish that animals could be copyright holders. They argued that all the profits from the use of the photos should go back to benefiting the endangered monkeys. PETA lost their case, and David Slater, who of course this whole time had been fighting the copyright ruling and claiming that they were his photos and that he had been losing money because they had been designated as open source, he ended up broke and depressed because this never got resolved. He maintained, though, that he was glad that the photographs had managed to highlight the plight of the monkeys to the world. This scenario raises the question of who is the artist. Is David Slater the artist, or are the monkeys the artists? The image in the upper right shows a very popular book and now movie series that many of you have probably read or watched the movies, The Hunger Games. A common view that many people hold, and maybe you even hold this view, is that popular media and entertainment, like The Hunger Games, are not the same thing as art. So the question that kind of comes up for something like The Hunger Games or Harry Potter or Percy Jackson or any of those really popular series that just become part of our culture is, can something that was created for mass entertainment or popular entertainment, can that be considered art? And if so, what must it attain to reach that elusive status of art? Okay, the image on the lower right shows an elephant painting, and you can see that's a pretty complex scene with a mother elephant, a child elephant, and a tree. So the Thai Elephant Conservation Center, founded in 1993, cares for more than 50 Asian elephants in a beautiful forest, conveniently located, and many tourists come to witness the elephants painting. But here are some firsthand accounts from tourists who have experienced it and didn't appreciate it. One person says, the elephant grasped the paintbrush and was guided along by its handler to paint a picture of two elephants and two trees. The handler turned his attention away for a moment, and the elephant began to use the green paint from the trees to paint one of the elephant figures. The handler then stabbed the elephant with a large hook on a stick on its front leg. The elephant then continuously tried to comfort its wound with its trunk, but it still had to grasp the brush and continue the painting as the handler guided it to. Another person says of a different experience, I saw one of the handlers was making an elephant repeatedly bow to a group of tourists by sticking it with the needle at the end of the stick he had. The elephants that painted are trained to paint the specific image on repeat and not from their own concepts. So if you look at the image in the bottom center, you'll also see an artwork by an elephant. This is an abstract artwork that contains some vibrant colors, energetic brushstrokes, but this was painted in completely different circumstances. Ruby was an elephant that lived at the Phoenix Zoo. One day, her keepers noticed her scratching in the dirt with a stick and decided to give her a brush, a canvas, and some paints. From then on, Ruby painted twice a week. For 3 years, zookeepers did not publicize the knowledge that Ruby the elephant could paint, but eventually they revealed her paintings to the world and they were able to sell some of them to raise money for conservation efforts. While Ruby's paintings were abstract, experts determined she did have a preference for certain colors, and moreover, she was self-motivated to paint once she was provided the tools. No one was poking her with sticks, forcing her to paint. So is Ruby the elephant an artist? Is what she produced art because it was self-motivated? She wasn't forced to do it. Is it more valuable then than the trained elephant's painting? And then the very last image shows a sink after cleaning a paint palette. It is an explosion of beautiful abstract colors. Maybe you've seen something like that in an art class before when you were rinsing your paint down the sink, which you really shouldn't do. You should put paint in the garbage. But this image raises the question of, can art happen accidentally? Is it art if there isn't an artist, right? It's beautiful, it's colorful, it's abstract, but can we call it art, or do we just say it's an accident? So thinking about these different scenarios should really stretch your imagination as to what is art, or what can art be, or who is even an artist. What does it mean to have art in our lives? According to Getling, living with art means letting it engage our attention, our imagination, and our intelligence, much like we did with the previous slide, considering each of those works. It means choosing to seek out encounters with art, to make it matter for your thought and your enjoyment, and to let it live in your imagination. With visual culture, it can be very easy to ingest the images all around us without even considering their meaning, symbolism, or agenda. We are living in a time where attempts to analyze something more deeply might even lead to mockery or disdain. In other words, someone might say to your art analysis, it's not that deep. But being a visually literate member of society means mining the depth of what images can and do mean, especially when they're all around us, influencing us every day. If you just imbibe visual culture without thinking about its meaning, you're very susceptible to propaganda, for example. However, on the other hand, we do have the side of art and visual culture that is about simple appreciation. For example, when you are served that beautifully arranged plate of sushi and you just have to take a photo, or how many of us have camera rolls just filled with sunsets or flowers or cute cats or dogs, right? We don't need to super psychoanalyze those. We just find them enjoyable. This is called aesthetics. Aesthetics concerns itself with our response to the natural world and to the world we make, especially the world of art. These are experiences that we enjoy via our senses. That's aesthetics. And you will learn more about this branch of philosophy in the video shared for this week. Art is often thought to be entirely subjective. It isn't, and we will delve into that in future modules. But each of us bring our preferences, our biases, our culture and upbringing, and our interpretations as to what is good art, and we bring that all to the classroom. So it's worth considering what each of us believes to be good art at the outset before we even go a lot further. So for this next part, I'm going to have you take a little art quiz. You're going to need a piece of paper and a pencil, and we're going to see which philosophy of art or aesthetics you might belong to. So in the following slides, I'll be showing you a variety of artwork from various cultures, time periods, and art movements. And I understand that it is really hard to separate artwork from its story or context. I'm just showing you images in a vacuum. And a work of art you might not normally be drawn to. It might become elevated after you learn its history. And some of these are going to be 2D pictures of 3D art. All of that complicates it, I understand. However, for this quiz, we're just going to be focusing on the visual, and I just want you to very quickly think, do I like that? Do I not like that? Right? So if you see something you enjoy, or it makes you feel, or you think it's good art, if you think that's art, that's good, that makes me feel something, I like that, I think that's art, I want you to write down the number of that slide. And just keep a line of your numbers, a running tally of the numbers that you chose. And then at the end, we're going to see what category you might fall into as far as aesthetics. Again, try not to spend too much time thinking. I'll be cycling through the slides rather quickly. And when you see something that you would think of as good art, I want you to jot the number down of the slide. Okay, here we go. Okay. So look at your list of numbers. There was one side that didn't have a number. That would have been a 1. So if that tips you over into a different perspective, then you can know that that was a 1. Do you have one number more than others? Maybe you have more 3s, maybe you have more 1s, maybe you have more 2s. The numbers loosely correspond to one of the 4 major philosophical perspectives of art on this slide. If you have more 1s in your list, perhaps you really prefer art that imitates life. You want your flowers and your landscapes and your people to look realistic. If you have more 2s on your list, maybe you think that good art is attuned to the elements and principles of design, and you think artwork is good when it has exemplary color, symmetry, pattern, volume, mass, light. If you have more 3s on your list, perhaps you want your art to communicate a message. Maybe you feel art should be used for activism or to tell us stories about the world, to make the world a better place, to communicate something important. If you have more 4s on your list, maybe you're drawn to art that evokes a strong emotional response. Maybe you feel like art should make you feel something. Art should provoke in us emotions that we might not normally feel. So of course this quiz is not bulletproof. It's merely a tool for consideration. And maybe you agree with your result, and maybe you were surprised by it, or maybe you just totally disagree, or maybe you think the whole quiz didn't really work for you. Wherever that you're starting for this course, whatever your personal perspective is on art, hopefully this course will help you gain an understanding and an appreciation for all kinds of art, broaden your perspective. Okay, so here are some further questions for consideration as you head into your readings for this week, based on these slides and based on what you're going to be reading. Does art require an artist? Does art require an audience? And does art require intention? So maybe consider some of those things as you're reading, and I look forward to reading your discussions for this week.